Through the last 40 years, there have been a lot of game consoles, a lot of successful ones as well. Nintendo Entertainment System, the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Wii, but few game consoles have had the worldwide success that the PlayStation 4 has. Through a console generation of 7 years, the PlayStation 4 have sold 120 million units. That means that the only other console which has outsold the PlayStation 4 is the PlayStation 2, if you're not counting handheld consoles. If you do count handheld, however, the Nintendo DS, Switch and Game Boy do surpass the PlayStation 4 in sales, but when you take into account that handheld is kind of a thing of its own, and that Nintendo has been generally uncontested in that field for the last 30 years as the sole console maker, it begins to make sense when you look at the numbers. What Sony did with the PlayStation 4 was unique because with the PlayStation 4, Sony won the console war. When you look at PlayStation as a brand, it's actually never been uncontested. There's always been another console that was in direct competition with Sony. Microsoft in particular with the Xbox consoles. Let's go through the consoles. PlayStation launched when Nintendo was flying high off the success of the N64. The PS2 was in direct competition with the original Xbox. Even though at that point Xbox hadn't managed to kind of cement itself as a real rival yet, and a true competitor to PlayStation. In 2006, Sony launched the PS3, and at this point Microsoft had just released the Xbox 360. At a cheaper price point and with consoles selling fan-favorite games like the Halo franchise. And now Xbox and PlayStation were true rivals. And for a long time it would stay that way. Almost every game at that time released both on PS3 and Xbox 360. And the consoles were pretty evenly matched in hardware and performance. This is where the console war began. Two consoles every 6 to 7 years, and there can only be one winner each generation. Many people took this very seriously, myself included. Not to a crazy extent like some other people, where they would call people out and harass them just because they were on a different console than themselves.
Xbox is so shit. Nobody wants it. Garbage. Imagine giving a shit about the PS5. Shut the fuck up, fanboy. Shittiest console ever. PlayStation is doo-doo. Xbox is for little...
But I remember being a PlayStation fanboy, as Xbox fanboys would call me, and just protecting PlayStation as a brand and as a console. Even though that maybe sometimes Xbox actually had the better deal, I would just blindly trust in PlayStation. And I'm sure that Xbox players would do the same for their console. But the real question is, why buy one console over the other? What difference does it make for the player? If they have the same capabilities, the only other winning argument that's left to influence the decision is two things: games and price. Sony quickly learned after the launch of the PS3 that it was a dumb decision to make it $100 more expensive than the Xbox 360. That was a bad move. This resulted in many people actually jumping ship from PlayStation 2 to Xbox 360 when the new generation of consoles came. So they lost a ton of players from the PlayStation 2 era. So Sony had to win people back, win gamers back. And what better way to do that than with games? Great games, and most importantly, PlayStation exclusive games, and a lot of them. PlayStation began releasing banger after banger of great games, and they quickly saw their sales numbers rise, and at the end of the console generation, they actually ended up surpassing the Xbox 360. Not because the console was better. I actually think the Xbox 360 was a bit more powerful and had some better hardware, but the PlayStation 3 won because of the games. Year after year, studios like Naughty Dog, Quantic Dream, Sucker Punch, and Insomniac kept raising the bar for what was possible in gaming, all the way from 2006 to 2013. The PlayStation 3 had been out for 7 years, and it had some really good games. And as a cherry on top, it had just closed off the generation with one of the all-time greats, The Last of Us, a PlayStation exclusive game.
Swear to me that everything that you said about the Fireflies is true.
And now, it was time for a new generation of consoles to take over, with a focus on what gamers want. Top quality experiences you can't get anywhere else, for a cheap price. In November of 2013, the PS4 launched at $400, which was $100 less than the newly announced rival console, the Xbox One.
$399. It's a very compelling price that offers incredible value given the amount of entertainment PS4 will provide to gamers over the next decade and beyond.
A cheaper console with more games. That's what gamers want. The slogan, "This is for the players," was really them doubling down that they had the gamers' interest in mind, which was the opposite of how the Xbox was really branded at the start. The console having a focus on more than just games.
Sports, 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 sports,
Sports. Sport, television. Television, TV, television.
Television, 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 TV, TV, TV. Xbox is about to become the next water cooler.
Huh? They would soon learn that people don't buy gaming consoles for all the bells and whistles. They buy gaming consoles for the games and for the best gaming experience. And in 2013, the best gaming experience was on the PlayStation.
Is PlayStation the best place to play? Without a doubt.
So by the end of 2013, the PS4 had sold 4.2 million units, and the Xbox One had just sold 3 million. This was the beginning of a long winning streak for PlayStation and Sony. 7 years of constantly year after year outselling the Xbox. But why did it keep happening? How come Xbox didn't bounce back with the Xbox One? Because what Sony did so incredibly well was to keep the momentum going for so long, with a bunch of dedicated first-party studios under their wing, creating top quality experiences for gamers. Sony kept expanding their first-party studios, now known under the umbrella term the PlayStation Studios. And when you look at the studios, it's all companies that are well known and respected in the gaming communities. But the only reason that Sony has these studios under their wing is because of the failure of the PS3 at launch. They had to learn from that. How do we improve? How do we give people what they want? And how do we sell our console? They learned from that and kept acquiring more studios with the common objective to create single-player, story-driven games that will stand the test of time. And this is what Xbox never really could get right, unfortunately. Because more games, more great games, is just better for everyone. They tried acquiring a lot of studios like PlayStation and promised that greatness awaits. But the output of the Xbox studios was just subpar and very underwhelming. And since then, they have been completely mismanaged by Microsoft, unfortunately, which means a lot of layoffs and people losing their jobs, which is just sad to see. All the while, PlayStation kept releasing console-selling games like God of War, Spider-Man, Uncharted 4, Ghost of Tsushima, just amazing games, and the output was consistent. They also had a clear vision of the marketing period and the branding of the games, where to showcase trailers and where not to, and how to create the most hype for games. E3 was a huge contributor to the PS4 era and the success that they had. Rest in peace. I know that I and many other people would stay up late. I'm in Europe, and that's why it was in the middle of the night always, which is just annoying. But anyways, I would set an alarm for 3 a.m. and watch the showcases all night until I was going to school the next morning. I would consistently watch all the showcases from Microsoft, Sony, and Ubisoft. And afterwards, there was always a discussion of who won that year, who had the best showcase, the best presentation. Of course, I'm a bit biased because I am a PlayStation fanboy, I've always been that, but the general consensus most years was also that Sony just put in a lot of work to their presentation to kind of try to outshine all the other ones, and they often did.
Crash 2, and Crash Warped, fully remastered from the ground up for PlayStation 4.
please join me in welcoming one of the most creative talents in the history of the world.
Hello, everyone. I'm back.
And that's why competition is great, because it forces people to do the best work to prove themselves. If there's no competition, you don't have that. It kind of encapsulates Sony's mentality under the leadership of Sean Layden. They wanted to create great games and celebrate great games. The whole Xbox family that generation, including the Xbox One X, which was Xbox's equivalent to the PS4 Pro, sold just short of 60 million units in its whole life cycle, which is a good number. It's a lot of units, sure, but the PS4 family, as I stated in the beginning of the video, sold around 120 million units. And so as we reach 2020, a new generation is just around the corner again. So in 2020, Microsoft announced their new console, or the new console series that they were making. The Xbox Series X and S. 2 consoles this time. To try and fix the problem they had with the Xbox One being too expensive for people, they made one which was focused on raw horsepower and being a little bit more expensive. Then they made the S version more budget friendly, but it was also a weaker console. So in theory it was a great idea because people could just pick and choose what they wanted. Shortly after, Sony unveiled the PlayStation 5. Sony had focused on performance, speed and better airflow to fix some of the problems the PS4 had, which was overheating. They had also completely revamped the controller. They implemented haptic feedback and adaptive triggers to the new PlayStation 5 controller. It was no longer called the DualShock, which it had been called for a very long time at this point. Now it was the DualSense. But at the end of the day, it is still the games that matter the most. The experiences you get with the console. And Sony still had all their first-party studios ready to create games for this new console. So now, 5 years after the launch of the new generation of consoles, the PS5 has sold around 80 million units. To compare, the Xbox Series X and S consoles have sold around 28.3 million consoles now. And that also means that it's already outsold the Xbox One by around 20 million units. So through great games, delivering on promises made to gamers, Sony won the console war.
PlayStation